So, 2 years ago, when I was dating my then girlfriend, who is now my wife. But during this story, we were maybe 4 months into dating each other. Since our relationship was fresh and new, I didn't know many of her friends and family. My then girlfriend at the time asked me to be a +1 for one of her friends who was going to get married. I was head over heels for my girlfriend at the time, so of course I agreed to. The wedding was for her friend Jessica, who was marrying a man named Clinton. The wedding was at this old school Catholic church that sort of reminded me of those churches you would see in Italy or France. It was a beautiful ceremony, and everything about the wedding was pretty much perfect. The priest was at the part where he was now inviting the bride and groom to say their vows. My girlfriend and I were sitting in the third row to the left. As the bride pulled out a piece of paper to begin reading her vows, I heard a commotion from behind me. I turned around, only to see a man barging through the back doors of the church. He immediately looked out of place. Everyone at the wedding was dressed in formal attire, suits and dresses. This guy came in dressed in a black hoodie and baggy sweatpants. Again, I didn't know who all the family and friends were at this point, but I watched as this man made a beeline to the front altar where the bride and groom were standing. I knew it was bad when other people attending started to speak and yell out in a panicked and fearful voice. But the man was moving too fast and too determined for anyone to stop him. By the time the bride and groom noticed this man, he was standing directly in front of them. I'll never forget the look of horror I saw on both of their faces. Now, as I said, I was only 3 rows back, so I could hear pretty much what they were saying to each other. The man in the black hoodie stood right in front of the bride and said, "You broke my heart, now I'll break yours." He pulled a revolver from his pocket of his hoodie. He aimed it at the groom and then pulled the trigger. Screams echoed throughout the church. The man then looked at the bride and pulled the trigger again. This all happened in less than 3 seconds. Some people started fleeing the church, but there were about 10 groomsmen who fearlessly tackled the gunman. I even got up to help as well, as they pinned him to the ground and pulled the gun away from him. It was like a scene straight out of a horror movie. Blood was splattered all across the bride's dress. Screams of terror continued to ring out throughout the church. Within 10 minutes, dozens of police cars and even a SWAT team showed up to the church. The man was restrained and then taken away. But I do have some good news. By the grace of God, both the groom and the bride survived the shooting. The groom was shot in the chest, the bullet missing his heart by millimeters, and the bride was shot in the collarbone. They both made full recoveries. I learned later on from my wife, who had more information about the case, that the gunman's gun jammed after the second shot. If it had not jammed, I think there definitely would have been casualties. And get this, the gunman was the ex-boyfriend of the wife. The wife left him for the man that she was marrying. I guess he plotted his revenge by trying to kill them both. But he's in jail now for the rest of his life for 2 counts of attempted murder. It honestly was the most terrifying moment in my life. Witnessing an active shooter does something subconsciously to the mind. Me and my wife married, and we had a completely normal and wonderful wedding. Always be on your guard, everyone, and thanks for listening. So, I'm a freelance photographer who happens to specialize on wedding events. One of my best friends, Chelsea, was getting married and asked if I could be her photographer for the wedding. And of course, I said yes. Chelsea's wedding was at this farm, surrounded by trees and beautiful land. Like, it was literally a gorgeous wedding. I think I actually took over 2,000 photos because there were so many people, and I wanted to capture every single magical moment for her. And after the wedding ended, I went back to my apartment to finalize and edit all the photos for her before I sent them out. I picked the best ones, edited them, and I think I had a total of 200 great photos that really told the story of how our wedding day went. I sent the photos over to Chelsea and eagerly awaited for her reaction. Well, after I sent them, I got a call from Chelsea that same day, but at like 10:30 at night. I picked up the phone, and she was sobbing uncontrollably to me. At first, I took this as a sign that she loved the moments that I have captured and was just so happy with the photos. But that was not the case. When she finally stopped crying so that I could actually hear what she was saying, she told me something that I was not expecting to hear. Chelsea said that in the photo of her and her husband putting the ring on her finger, there was something that she noticed. Directly behind her, there was some white, misty figure. Chelsea said, as she looked closer at the figure, she recognized it to be her father, who had died just 3 months prior. Now, I consider myself a professional photographer. If I noticed any blemish or bad quality photo, I would never have sent it to her. I asked her to send me the photo to see what she was referring to. Chelsea sent the photo over to me, and then I saw it. Almost clear as day, the figure she was referring to. And here's the crazy part. It did look like her father. And I couldn't believe it. My rational mind was trying to tell me that it could have been some kind of reflection, but the more I looked at the photo, the more I knew this wasn't some kind of error. It really looked like a ghostly figure of her father. I'm not sure if this story is scary or heartwarming, but it's definitely changed my opinion on the supernatural. We showed the photograph to all her family and friends, and they all agree that the figure standing in the picture was indeed Chelsea's father. She thanked me profusely over and over again for capturing such a beautiful moment in time. And I've done hundreds of weddings and events, and nothing like this has ever happened to me before. I never believed in the supernatural before, but now it definitely has me thinking twice. Thanks for listening. I can't believe I'm telling you this story, but I feel like I have to. I married my wife Elizabeth 2 years ago. We had a very small wedding and only invited close family and friends to it. The entire wedding was perfect. It was supposed to happen in the church that I grew up in, and the priest to marry us was even the one who baptized me as a child. But the day did not end well. Shortly before the ceremony was to begin, one of my groomsmen, Charles, had suddenly gone missing. Like I'm talking we were about to start, but no one could find him. I'll be honest, my first thought was that he was drunk somewhere, because he did go pretty hard before everything began. Regardless of that, I was so disappointed that we had to begin the wedding without him, because he was my close friend who was now missing the ceremony. After we both said I do, we all headed back to the local country club for the reception. When we got there, Charles was still missing. And at this point, everyone was starting to worry where he could be. This behavior was not like him at all. We called his cell phone, texted him, and did everything we possibly could to try to get a hold of him, but nothing worked. I know this sounds messed up, but I couldn't get too worked up about it, because it was my wedding day, and we had paid a ton of money for everything to be perfect. Well, as the reception was winding down around 8 p.m., that's when people were suggesting that we get the police involved in case anything bad did happen to him. So that's what we did. My heart still hurts telling this part, but when the police came out to investigate the situation, we did find out what happened. Back at the church where my wedding was, the church resided alongside a major river. There were rails along the pathway so no one falls in. Charles, unfortunately, had too many drinks and was walking along the path before the wedding started. He must have slipped, and he fell into the river below. Police ended up finding his body 5 miles from the church, dead, and washed up on a small embankment. Police said when he fell into the river, his head hit the shallow part, which broke it, and he drowned due to being paralyzed. On a day that I thought would actually be the best day of my life, it actually turned out to be a complete and utter nightmare. His funeral was a week after our wedding, and I still miss my friend so dearly. This isn't something I tell to too many people due to the nature of the story, but I just pray to God that he's at peace. I love you, Charles. I hope to see you in the next life.